morning. I am the proud father of 3 rambunctious boys, ages 10, 6, and 3. And I love it. I love being a father. Now, if you know anything about boys, everything is physical. I mean, if it's not locked down, it gets knocked down. But it's a thrill. And while I'm enjoying their childhood, I know that one day they will grow up and enter a tough world. And I want them to be prepared for it. So, one of the things I've done is I've tried to take the best teachings from my life and apply it to theirs. Essentially take the greatest things my parents taught me and leave out the things they did not teach me that weren't so great. But as I realize and then look back on my life, one of the things that I noticed was that one of the greatest things about my life, one of the things that I remember and will always remember, is that I always enjoyed sitting down, having dinner with my family. It was a great experience. And one of the things I noticed was that dinner time was very powerful. And it was because it was how my parents used the time. It was more than just about eating. It was about, my parents had used the time to focus on 3 major things, and that was conflict resolution, character building, and giving us a strong sense of purpose. And so much of what I know, I learned over a plate of food. And so what I want to do today is share with you a timeless tradition in my household and give you an understanding and describe to you how my parents use food and principles to send us off in the world as rock stars. Now, getting 5 people to sit down for dinner every day was no easy task. Both my parents worked. My siblings and I were involved in sports or extracurricular activities. We were a typical middle-class family. But my parents viewed dinner time as sacred time. No TVs, no telephones, no interruptions. In fact, while they worked with our schedule, dinner time was never shortchanged. We had to work our schedule around theirs, around that event. Now, once you got to the table, things got hectic real quick. And if there were ground rules, and if you didn't know them, things could go bad. And so if you had the prep assignment, which means it was your turn to set the table, you better make sure hot sauce was on the table. This was a big deal in my family. Generally speaking, most African American households that serve soul food on the table, hot sauce better accompany it. And if you didn't have it, my family would talk about you throughout dinner. Can you believe Brian almost forgot the hot sauce? This is why they're using it. And I'd be like, Dad, it's all good. It's right there. There it is. Yeah, but you almost forgot it. I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous. Second, these rules applied all the time. No elbows on the table. No chewing food with your mouth open. No leaving the table without being asked to be excused. No eating before saying grace. And no reaching across the table for any food item. You must ask for the item to be passed to you, especially the hot sauce. And so this was my life. And so once this took place, once the table was set, we'd all sit down, we'd hold hands, and we'd say grace. Now this was a whole other experience, primarily because of a couple things. One, my father was a Southern proud black man who happened to be extremely long-winded. And he took pride in being the head of the household. And being able to say grace was significant. It was symbolic of his position. The other thing was he grew up very poor, and he wanted us to be fully aware of that. And he wanted us to appreciate what we had. Now, the second thing was my older brother, not being in full control of his faculties, took a great deal of pleasure in watching me suffer in pain. So there we were, holding hands, 10 minutes into the prayer, my dad showing no signs of slowing down. I'm sitting there, and meanwhile, my brother is mercilessly squeezing my hand, grinning as he's doing it. And so, when dinner time, or when prayer was finished, not only would we have to take our cold plate now and reheat it in the microwave, I also had to shake my hand and wait for the blood to return so that I could eat my food. And this was our life. But there we were, all together, no interruptions, sacred time. Now, conversations would begin, and it would usually start off with my mom kicking off what we called high point, low point drills. And this is where she would go around the room and ask each of us what was the high point in our day and what was the low point in our day. And I thought, what a brilliant way of finding out if we were having any problems. And if we were, they would skillfully use a story or an old adage or a metaphor to help support us and give us the feedback we needed to deal with the problem. For example, if I was having a problem with a kid in school and my parents thought it was make it violent or it was going to be unfavorable to me, my dad would kick out an old adage like, well, he who runs today lives to fight another day. And he would say it in a way like he used this 1,000 times in his life, giving me the out I needed. And other times, family members would chime in and offer advice on what I could do to get out of the situation. But what we did was we stuck together. Oftentimes, we would learn how to deal with conflicts just by listening to our parents talk about their childhood stories, or listening to our parents talk to each other about challenges they were having at work. But the beauty was in the sharing, because one person's problem in the family became everyone's problem. And everyone had a stake in the outcome. And there we were, all together, no interruptions, sacred time. Now, once high point, low point drills were over, my parents, during a gap in the conversation, would ask pointed questions about our friends, maybe a girlfriend. Now, my dad vowed that my sister, the day she would leave the house would be the same day she got married. So the term boyfriend was never even used in our house. But my parents would probe to find out if the people we were hanging around with were like-minded people. They would listen for behavior that was acceptable or unacceptable. And more comical was the parent-to-parent interaction that took place and the checks and balances that took place there. Oftentimes, something would set my dad off and he would respond unfiltered. And my mom would check him. And my brother and I, we lived for that exchange because that back and forth sometimes got very entertaining. But there we were, all together, no interruptions, sacred time. Now, the final thing is, my parents were what I call accountability parents. They were old school accountability parents. If you needed a sense of purpose, or if you think you didn't matter, all you had to do was get in trouble in school. My parents would let you know how much you mattered. Maintaining the family reputation was huge. You were part of the family, and everything you did connected to the family. It mattered. And I remember one time I got in trouble in school, and I knew the teacher was going to call home. So I run home, and I run to the basement, grab the telephone, and I wait. Sure enough, the teacher called, and I could hear my dad pick up the phone upstairs. And so as he's picking up the phone upstairs, I'm simultaneously picking it up downstairs to hear the conversation. And this is my first time where I get a chance to understand teachers speak. And when something like this, Mr. Patterson, let me just say, Brian is a wonderful boy. A wonderful boy. And it is such a pleasure to have him in our classroom. But today I found he was a little talkative. And it was very tough to keep him on task. Not the words you want to hear. I hung up the phone, and then dinner time came around. So there we are sitting there. I know what my dad knows. And it was very tense, very tense. And so my mom starts these high point, low points. Goes around the room. What's your high point today? What's your low point? And everyone worked around the room, and they got to me. Brian, what was your high point today, and what was your low point? So I'm sitting there. I'm nervous. Every fiber in my body is tight. And so I say, can I start off with the low point first? Mom says, sure. Now, meanwhile, 1,000 conversations are happening inside my head. Voices in every part of my body, voices I didn't know existed, are talking to me. And especially the voice from my rear end. He's saying, get us out of this one. Say something brilliant. So I say, it's nice to be part of this family. My dad looks up and he glares at me. And so I continue. I just can only hope that when I get older, my children take the values I learned here at this table. And then my dad takes his glasses off, and now I know he's on to me. And the voice below says, throw the Hail Mary! So I turn around and I say, here we are, all together, no interruptions, sacred time? My dad says, no, bedtime. Thank you very much.